101.1 The Answer. Doc Washer Show continues, or you can sound off and talk back at 501-401-1011. And yes, you can call because the liner that ran at the top of the show was not true. I guess it was left over from last Friday when we had Good Friday off, but this program is not pre-recorded. Just so you know. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. So J.D. Vance and Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff are on their way to Pakistan to supposedly negotiate with the Iranians. And I just need to explain something to you that really has me concerned. Because no matter how clear the president is, no matter how clear the vice president is, no matter how wary they are of the fact you can't trust the Iranians, of the fact that obviously, they still believe in death to America, et cetera, et cetera. In all of the conversations that I have heard, there's one thing that keeps on being missed. And I'll tell you what it is. And I got to thinking about this when the ceasefire was announced. You had thousands of Muslims all over social media cheering, celebrating, as if this was an indication that Iran is winning. Okay? So here's the deal. From the Muslim mindset, whether it's Iran or some knucklehead podcaster, social media influencer living in his mom's basement in Pakistan, from the Muslim mindset, the fact that the U.S. was willing to do a ceasefire and engage in negotiations, by definition, must mean that Iran is winning. It must mean, now I'm talking about their mindset. I'm not talking about reality here. I'm talking about their mindset. It must mean that the Iranians have us over a barrel and we didn't have any choice other than to agree to a ceasefire and negotiations. Now, the reason that they look at it this way is because it is inconceivable to them that anybody would willingly show mercy to, in this case, the citizens of Iran, because we know if we bomb the mullahs back into the Stone Age, it's not just going to hurt the mullahs, but innocent people in Iran. And so there's no way they can wrap their minds around the idea that we actually do want peace. Because they don't want peace, they want conquest, and they project that onto everybody else in the world. And so it's bad enough that they will never willingly agree to our objectives, which are diametrically opposed to what they want. It's bad enough that we have every reason in the world to believe, and President Trump's aware of this, of course, that they're just trying to string us along. They're just trying to play the waiting game while they try to regroup. It's bad enough that there's no possible way that if they do sign an agreement that's palatable to us, that they would ever keep it. All of that is bad enough. And President Trump and his team are fully aware of all of that. But there's one point I don't know if they are aware of. As important as it is that they're aware of all of what I just said, I don't know if they are aware of the fact that to the Ayatollah, if he's still alive, and the mullahs, and all of the rest of them, this is a sign of weakness. Osama bin Laden himself once said that the Muslim mindset, the Muslim worldview, respects the strong horse. So, when our service members were subjected to what was called Black Hawk Down in Mogadishu, Somalia, in the first year of Bill Clinton's presidency, there was a movie made about it, Black Hawk Down. And the corpses of our service members were dragged through the streets of Mogadishu, Somalia, by jihadists. Years later, Osama bin Laden said the Muslim world saw that, and they're like, oh, okay, so the U.S. is a paper tiger. So they're not really all powerful like we've always thought. Okay, we can hit them, and we'll hit them hard. The Muslim world respects the strong horse. They don't have to like the strong horse, but that's who they respect. And for better or for worse, voluntarily calling a ceasefire and agreeing on negotiations is seen by all of them as a sign of weakness. And look, if we're not able to cobble together an agreement, and I'd be shocked if we were able to, and if indeed we do have to go back and literally bomb them into the Stone Age, they still won't learn a thing from it. They never do. I've said it before, I'll say it again because I don't mind repeating myself. These people learn a maniacal hatred for non-Muslims, not only non-Muslims, but people who aren't the right kind of Muslim, from the cradle. They don't learn logic. They don't learn linear reasoning. They don't understand objective reality. So good luck trying to explain cause and effect to them because they're never gonna get it. So in the meantime, I am one American who is quite concerned the idea that the vice president of the United States is on his way to Pakistan, which is not a friendly country to us. As recently as March 1st of this year, there were violent protesters attacking our embassy in the capital of Pakistan. And the Pakistani MPs, law enforcement, whatever, were not restraining them, and our Marines had to shoot them. Pakistan is the country that let Osama bin Laden hang out there. His compound at Abbottabad was about 100 yards away from Pakistan's version of West Point. He lived right next door to their military academy. I'm extremely concerned about the danger that our vice president might be in going to Pakistan, and it doesn't help that the guy in charge of the Secret Service is incompetent, at best incompetent, at best, and perhaps worse. So just very serious concern about that. Yeah, Abbottabad, Pakistan, where Osama bin Laden was in hiding for years after they hit us in 9/11, is right next to the Pakistani military academy. They knew where he was the whole time. Right there in Abbottabad, Pakistan. And by the way, young Tommy, you're kind of young. I don't know. You probably remember when Navy SEAL Team 6 took out Osama bin Laden. That was big news. But I'll bet you never heard what Osama bin Laden's last words were. Well, I guess this is about as it gets. Hello! No, I don't deserve that. You're too kind. I'll be here all week. Come early Friday for the No Smoking Show. Be sure to try the veal. Remember your waitress. More coming up. By the way, Professor Robert Steinbuck, the only conservative law professor, William H. Bowen School of Law at Euler, scheduled to be our guest out of the 4:30 news. He has a new op-ed in the Demgaz this morning. Never again, again. That's coming up as the Doc Washer Show continues on Little Rock's premier talk station, 101.1 The Answer. 101.1 The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues, or you can sound off and talk back at 501-401-1011. We got some audio we want to get into here before we run out of time with the bottom of the hour news. J.D. Vance, on his way to Pakistan, had some things to say. Very concerned. Pray for his safety because, I mean, this would be like going to negotiate with Iranians in Iraq. Or Turkey or somewhere. It's just, I don't think it's safe. Anyway, here he is, J.D. Vance, on his way to Pakistan.
Look, we're looking forward to the negotiation. I think it's going to be positive. We'll, of course, see, as the President of the United States said, if the Iranians are willing to negotiate in good faith, we're certainly willing to extend the open hand. If they're going to try to play us, then they're going to find that the negotiating team is not that receptive. So we're going to try to have a positive negotiation. The President has gave us some pretty clear guidelines, and we're going to see. So I hope you guys have a safe flight. We'll certainly take some questions later on. But for now, let's get on the plane and hit the road. Thank you all.
It's insane to suggest the possibility that the Iranians might be willing to negotiate in good faith. It's insane to suggest that they might not try to play us. Now, again, if J.D. Vance is merely saying these words, knowing that they're not going to, and knowing that history will declare, well, what else could Trump and Vance what else could they have done? Okay, fine. But you can't take that at face value. All right, General Jack Keane was on with Brian Kilmeade, and he responded to a question from Kilmeade over on Fox. Are you optimistic? Cut one, please.
Well, the president has information that none of us have. So there's something there that's telling him this looks better than any of the other negotiations that he's been involved in, and certainly what the Iranians did with the Obama administration. So that's got to be a fact. But no, I'm not optimistic about it because this is what the Iranians do. I mean, they are masters at obfuscation and delaying negotiations.
Exactly. I mean, that's not breaking news. We all know it. General Jack Keane responds to Kilmeade. Cut two, please.
What's on the table is everything that they value. Everything from the nuclear to the ballistic missiles to their drones to support for proxies. Everything they stand for, they would have to voluntarily give up. It's hard to get your head around the fact that they would actually do that. What they will likely do is make concessions on a number of points that will incentivize us. Oh, this is different. They're willing to make a deal here. Drag this thing out for a number of weeks. And why do they want to drag it out? Well, because they don't want us to go back and reattack. And the longer there is lower oil prices, the lower there's less economic pain, the longer there's less political pressure, it makes it that much tougher in their minds for the administration to go back and finish the job militarily. That, I believe, is really their strategy. And they're very clever at doing this. They're actually better at this than they are at fighting.
No question about that. They lose every battle militarily, but, they're pretty good at gumming up the works and negotiating. General Jack Keane responds to Kilmeade. Cut three, please.
And the other thing is, whatever the deal is, Brian, let's say we actually get to something and they're signing papers. Can we really trust these guys going forward?
Absolutely
I don't think so.
No, that's the point. You cannot trust these guys going forward. It's a fool's errand to think that you can. And again, I'm not taking J.D. Vance at face value there. I think he knows that. I'm sure Trump knows it. One more cut from General Jack Keane responds to Kilmeade. Cut four, please.
We got to be prepared, and I know our forces can open up that strait and protect the ships going through it. People are hand-wringing about a drone here and a missile there, and it's not going to take anything to stop it. They don't understand the plan, all right, and the details of the plan. The United States military can secure a defined space that's moving through the straits, put an absolute air cap and an air bubble around all of that and make certain that anything that tries to penetrate it is going to be defeated. We've been protecting our own ships against Iranians, have been firing on them for weeks. We can certainly do this. It's considerably more limited than that.
Right.
Admittedly, they have a whole shoreline to fire from, but you think we're actually going to let anybody come close to that shoreline? We'll have Apache helicopters up, surveillance up. We know how to do this.
Right.
It's not that big of a deal.
So,
I'm not saying it's not challenging. I'm not saying there isn't some risk associated with it. There's risk associated with every military operation, but it's quite doable.
All right, very good point. I think we got room for one more clip here. Let's go with Trey Yingst over at Fox News reporting from that part of the world. Trey Yingst.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. With high-stakes talks scheduled this weekend in Islamabad, Pakistan, an Israeli intelligence official tells Fox News Iran is indeed demanding fees for the few vessels it's allowing to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. This official adds the strait is effectively under full IRGC control. They decide who gets to go through, but more importantly, who doesn't. I am told that there is intelligence being shared in the intel community about how Iran is trying to tighten its grip on this strait ahead of the negotiations this weekend. Overnight, President Trump taking to Truth Social to talk about the issue, saying, quote, Iran is doing a very poor job, dishonorable, some would say, of allowing oil to go through the Strait of Hormuz. That is not the agreement we have.
Indeed. That's not the agreement we have at all. So they're testing Trump's patience, and they don't have any idea that they are in a position of weakness because, again, as I said earlier in the show, since the U.S. said, hey, we'll call a ceasefire and negotiate, to the Iranian mind, to the Muslim mind, that means, oh, we got them over a barrel. Oh, we're actually winning. Oh, they don't have any cards to play. Oh, and they couldn't be more wrong. They cannot wrap their mind around what Trump is doing. More coming up. So Doc Washer's show continues. 101.1 The Answer. 101.1, The Answer. Doc Washer Show continues, where you can sound off and talk back at 501-401-1011. Before I get to our guest, Professor Robert Steinbuck, William H. Bowen School of Law at Euler, I forgot to mention the top of the show, former speechwriter for President George W. Bush, Ari Fleischer, now a big fan of President Trump, is out there on X saying there is good reason to worry about the safety of our negotiators in Pakistan. The country is armed and dangerous, and the government is not fully in control. Previous high-level visits were short and involved decoy aircraft, as when then-President Clinton surreptitiously changed airplanes so no one would know which one he was on. The U.S. Secret Service did not like President Bush going there in 2006. The Secret Service will be tested this trip. So too will the military that supports this mission. Pray for the safety of our negotiators, including the vice president, and for their success. Very concerned about that because I think we have the wrong guy in charge of the Secret Service. Anyway, on Fridays, our next guest, Professor Robert Steinbuck, the only conservative law professor at William H. Bowen School of Law at Euler, regularly has an op-ed in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, the major daily newspaper in the state of Arkansas. And I believe last Friday, Professor Steinbuck, your op-ed was never again. And this Friday, it is never again. Am I correct, sir?
Again. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And I read it, and it's fantastic. And I'm just very concerned that our legislature has allowed there to be such a thing as the King Fahd Center, University of Arkansas, Fayetteville, supported financially by the Saudis, which regularly, habitually employs pro-jihad, anti-Jewish, anti-Semite, anti-American freaks. And something needs to be done about this. But I'm going to try to stop filibustering, let you get in a word edgewise.
Well, if you want to continue to compliment me, I'll let you talk as long as you want. But, last few weeks, actually, I've been talking about anti-Semitism in Arkansas, particularly focused on this King Fahd Center at the University of Arkansas. And last week, which I repeat a little bit this week, I talk about a professor up there, Moja Kopf, and she writes, she had two signs on her door, one from the river to the sea, and the other one says that, hey, how come when we have a presentation on Palestinians, we've always got to present the views of Israelis? Isn't that like when we have a conversation about African Americans, we've got to have the KKK? Really?
Yeah,
really?
It's just ridiculous.
And then let me go back to the first one just for a moment, because there was a woman today who published an op-ed opposing me, and she says, well, Steinbuck says river to the sea means the destruction of Israel, but, Palestinians view it another way. Well, I view it in the way I view logic and truth. The river and the sea are the borders of the state of Israel. If you say Palestine from the river to the sea, it's like saying Palestine from New York to California. What's left of the U.S.? That calls for the destruction of the state of Israel. It's awful. And this woman, who, by the way, in her column says, as a Jew, listen, I can tell you this, she ain't speaking for the Jews. I speak for the Jews. And I don't write in my column as a Jew. She's trying to take some credit based on what may be her religious beliefs. But this week's column focuses on another employee, or I should say former employee at the King Fahd Center up there at the University of Arkansas. This was the director, a woman by the name of Shirin Saidi. And let me read to you some of the posts, just some of the posts that she put on X/Twitter. Long live Iran, free Palestine. Isn't that an interesting link? Iran and Palestine. Israel's a terrorist and is a terrorist and genocidal state that must be dismantled by international forces. By the way, free Palestine, she continues. Perhaps my second favorite is she says, Ayatollah Khamenei, the leader who kept Iran intact during the Israeli attack, by the way, that's the first attack, may God protect you and the Iranian people from the Israeli regime. Whoops.
Oh, good grief.
Whoops. How'd that work out? Then she says, now we get to my favorites. To the Arkansas State Legislature, you were unable to punish me because of the Zionist proxies who give you money and know your secrets, and now you're attacking the Middle Eastern Studies Center, that's the King Fahd Center, and my colleagues, right? Zionist proxies who give you money and know your secrets. What is she saying there, Doc? She said, yeah, it's the Jews who control the media and who control the politicians, and they got a secret bank of information because they're spying on you. I mean, this is right out of Nazi propaganda.
It certainly is. And I just have to say this. I appreciate your restraint.
Is there any?
Yeah. I appreciate your restraint in identifying the woman who wrote the op-ed to respond to your op-ed. Gwen Gertz, by the way.
That's it, Gwen Gertz. That's right.
I went on LinkedIn. She's an English adjunct professor at University of Arkansas, Fayetteville. But there's no way that her contention in her op-ed that, from the river to the sea means different things to different people. No, she knows that's not true.
Exactly. Well, by the way, Doc, Heil Hitler meant, like salute Hitler, and it meant a whole bunch more. But this one's literal. Palestine from the river to the sea means we've got to mow over Israel. We don't have multiple dimensions in which we're living. There's either an Israel from the river to the sea, or there's a Palestine from the river to the sea. But there can't be both. Now, mind you, in 1947, the British offered both. They offered Palestine for part of the river, next to part of the river, and then Israel next to part of the sea. Israel was the land that the British controlled was to be divided between Arabs and Jews. The Jews said yes, and the Arabs said no, and then attacked the Jews. And they lost. And they lost in 48. They lost in 57. They lost in
67 and 73.
In 73, 82, 89, and it goes on and on and on and including most recently when the Palestinian terrorists from the quasi-independent Gaza, mind you, we need a country. You had a country.
Yeah.
You had a country.
Well, I mean, it was called Jordan, and in 1970, when they attacked the king there, major tactical error, and a lot of them got wiped out because King Hussein wanted to remain in power and actually wanted to remain, above ground and breathing. He's like, we're not going to put up with that. You guys are not welcome here anymore, as the Jordanian army defeated a lot of them and killed a lot of them in battle. But that's a whole nother show. That's ancient history. Mm-hmm. But this is outrageous.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, it's outrageous. Let me read you. She says, I'm not done. Saidi then says, Western and European societies must apologize to Arabs and Muslims after discovering that terrorism is an American Zionist creation. Wait, what? Wait, what?
Well, again, I appreciate your discretion because I might respond to her, yo mama is such a creation. Sorry. I grew up in the South. I'm sorry.
That was a repost, right? And then she reposts, thrust the dagger from Doha into the throats of the Zionists so that all of them howl. Now, to the credit, and this is important, Doc, to the credit of the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville and the University of Arkansas system and the University of Arkansas president, who's doing a good job, they fired her. God bless him.
Well, that's
Fired him.
fantastic, but
Yeah.
someone who is so ignorant of biology and human physiology to think that if you thrust a dagger into someone's throat, they would be able to howl. I mean, that's just one of the stupidest things I've ever read in my life. And it is challenged only by what former emeritus professor of anthropology at University of Arkansas, Ted Swedenborg, said.
Oh, I'm well familiar with old Teddy.
Yeah, what old Teddy said about her op-ed. He says, and of course, you can't comment on his Facebook page. He says, Gwen Gertz steps up to defend Professor Moja Kov against the scurrilous charge of anti-Semitism and to defend the truth in today's paper, unfortunately. And to its discredit, the University of Arkansas sides with the viewpoint of the odious UALR law professor Robert Steinbuch. So it has been my experience, Professor Steinbuch, if I may,
Yes, sir.
that when people resort to ad hominem, for my listeners in Dumas, that means name calling. When people resort to name calling, it tends to betray their profound frustration with their inability to construct a persuasive, coherent argument. And I'm kind of like, here's looking at you, Ted Swedenborg.
Thank you, sir. Well, that and the fact that I've got to go look up odious now shows you how impactful Teddy's commentary is.
Well, maybe if he'd used the word odoriferous.
Odoriferous would work. Teddy is well known in these circles. Teddy has never met a person who wants to do away with the state of Israel that he hasn't agreed with, because he is so far left, he's falling off.
Wow.
I mean, yeah. So,
Speaking of which, yeah. I didn't mean to get into this. Yeah. But you know, the word picture there reminds me of the people who believe in the flat Earth, the Flat Earth Society, and I think that is so ridiculous because, as somebody pointed out a while back, if the Earth were actually flat, cats would have knocked everything off of it by now.
That's right.
No, I don't deserve that. You're too kind.
There you go.
Butter.
But so, you know, to put a bow on this, if I may, Doc.
Yes, I was hoping you would.
Indeed. By the way, I forgot to mention, so let's just mention now, of course, my views are my views alone and not necessarily those of the university.
Or the Board of Regents, but they should be.
There you go. So the university has done the right thing. They got rid of Saidi with her stabbing in the neck or whatever it was. And Kopf, they told her she's got to take down her odious signs. I still don't know what it means, but it sounds good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Her one sign says river to the sea. By the way, Gwen, what was Gwen's last name? Gertz. Gertz never seemed to mention the other sign that equates Israeli point of view with the KKK. That sounds rather balanced. That's a good message to send to your students, isn't it?
I think it's whack, yo.
It's whack. So they told her to take down her signs. By the way, I've been complaining about those signs, I think, for 2 years. So, you know, I guess better late than never. But here's the bottom line. We need to shut down this King Fahd Center. We need, and the parent organization, I don't mean that literally, but there's an organization called the Middle Eastern Studies Association, I think.
Yeah.
MESA, M-E-S-A. This organization goes around and funds these propaganda entities and supports these propaganda entities. When I wrote some op-eds before regarding things going on at the King Fahd Center, they ginned up some AstroTurf letters, all the same letter, you know, where you just put your name on it. And it was in conjunction with folks associated with the Middle Eastern Studies Association. So we need to, A, shut down the King Fahd Center, and B, make sure not a dollar not a dollar of money from Arkansas institutions, government institutions, goes to that organization. We shouldn't be underwriting that organization. We shouldn't be paying their dues. We shouldn't be sending people to their conferences. That organization is not producing output that we value in any way. And this is the thing, universities get money from all sorts of sources. They get it from the legislature, they get it from tuition, they get it from people who donate money. Once that money hits the coffers of the university, guess what it is? Public money.
Yeah.
And at that point, we get to have a say.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
None of that public money should be spent on any of these things. It's time for a change. We've seen dramatic positive change under this governor and under this Secretary of Education, and both of them have repeatedly said no to indoctrination. Well, this is the worst kind of indoctrination going on, and we need to put an end to it.
So we absolutely do. I was interested. I Googled the etymology of the Gertz surname while you were speaking here.
Yes.
The surname Gertz, Gertz, has North German, Ashkenazi Jewish, and Sorbian origins. Primarily, it's a patronymic from a short form, Gert, of the Germanic personal name Gerhard, which is German for spear brave. It also functions as a variant of the Jewish name Herz, influenced by Russian, or an occupational name for a fiddler from Sorbian Gurk. Anyway, I say all that to say this. I don't know if she's done the 23andMe, the genealogy, the Ancestry.com, any of that stuff. But I am reminded of Ari Fleischer, former press secretary for George W. Bush, the other day, responding to how perplexed non-Jewish American conservatives are. My goodness, why are so many Jewish people in the U.S. just faithful devotees of the Democrat Party, no matter how anti-Semitic it is? You look at Ilhan Omar, you look at Rashida Tlaib, no matter how anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, and Ari Fleischer, sad to say, said, well, here's the deal. For a lot of Jewish Americans, abortion is more important to them than anything as an issue, and they couldn't care less about Israel. They identify with the Democrat Party, regardless of how anti-Semitic it is, for that one issue. And the thing that brought that to mind, whether Gwen Gertz has Jewish ancestors or not, is I was just kind of scrolling through her Facebook page, and sure enough, she's at some kind of pro-abortion, pictures of her at some kind of pro-abortion demonstration in Fayetteville a few years ago. I'm like, and all of a sudden what Ari Fleischer said came flooding back in. It's sad, man.
Well, can I make an important point? I wrote some columns on this a while back and addressed precisely that issue, because I get asked all the time, why are there so many Jews in the Democratic Party? And my answer is, I can give you some of the history, but it's in a good reason. And the problem, and what I wrote about in several columns, is Judaism prohibits abortion, just like Christianity.
Yeah.
But there are various groups within Judaism, and there's one called Reform, which Reform means change.
Right.
And they've changed a bunch of rules.
Right.
For example, they say that, you can eat pork. Well, Jews are prohibited from eating pork. Doesn't mean they can't put it in their mouth. It just means they broke a rule if they put it in their mouth. Well, the Reform movement says, we don't like that rule anymore. We don't need to apply that rule anymore. And I think it's in that section of Judaism where you see these people who favor or who are, what do we call it, pro-choice, right? Well, the conservative Jews are just like conservative Christians in terms of their religious beliefs that life is life, and you don't destroy life, and you don't have an abortion. But you are right. There is a strain amongst Jews, unfortunately, that supports abortion. But I want to make clear to your listeners, that is not the doctrine of the religion.
Right, exactly. And, it takes me back to something that really shocked me years ago. One of my daughters gave me a book, I think it was for my birthday, from a woman who grew up Muslim in Egypt and eventually, I think, became a Christian. Her name is Noni Darwish, and she wrote a book called "Cruel and Usual Punishment: The Terrifying." Yeah, instead of cruel and unusual, cruel and usual punishment, the terrifying global implications of Islamic law. And she said something about Muslim culture and Islamic Sharia law that I think would shock a lot of people. She said, abortion is not illegal in Muslim countries like Egypt. Adoption is illegal.
Really?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Most people didn't. Don't take my word for it. The book is called Cruel and Usual Punishment. I think part of the thing about adoption being illegal was Muhammad was lusting after his adopted son's wife and took her away. And somehow or another that led to, adoption is really not a good thing after all. So speaking of Sharia and speaking of the fact that we hope that the legislature will do something about this King Fahd Center, I remembered, I Googled this. Back in the day, somebody was trying to pass a law through the Arkansas state legislature to outlaw Sharia. And I Googled.
That passed. My understanding is that passed.
Well, if it passed, it certainly didn't get signed into law. Let me tell you what Google gave us.
Okay.
February 2017, then Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson discouraged the Arkansas legislature from passing legislation intended to outlaw Sharia law, characterizing such measures as unnecessary. The legislation, HB 1041, often referred to as the American Laws for American Courts Bill, was proposed by Republican State Representative Brant Smith. Good man. It aimed to me too. It aimed to prohibit Arkansas courts from applying foreign laws, with proponents focusing on the perceived threat of Sharia law. Governor Hutchinson questioned the need for the law, telling reporters in 2017 he had not identified the influence of foreign laws in Arkansas court as a problem. He said, quote, "I'm searching for a reason for that legislation." Hutchinson and other critics viewed the bill as an unnecessary measure targeting a non-existent issue, despite proponents' claims it would protect citizens. The bill was largely considered symbolic by observers, with critics viewing it as stemming from anti-Muslim sentiments. The bill eventually passed the House, but faced opposition from those who argued that constitutional protections and existing state policies already prohibited the application of foreign laws that violated U.S. law. Now, 2017, that's 9 years ago, so something similar may have passed since then, but Asa was like, well, I don't really see the need for this. I don't. And I'm wondering, is there a Nobel Prize available for kicking the can down the road? Because if there is, I think we should nominate Asa. It's not too late. A Nobel for kicking the can down the road.
Sure. I'm reading a post put up by State Senator Dan Sullivan a few days ago, and he refers to a 2017 law, HB 1041, which was signed in. He says it's signed into law as Act 980.
Really? Because my memory was that Asa was able to stop it, but I'll look that up. Arkansas Act 980. But I mean, if there's not a Nobel for kicking the can down the road, maybe, I don't know, a Peabody, a Pulitzer, something. Asa deserves it.
Exactly.
Arkansas Law 980. I'll look it up. We got to run to it, brother. Robert Steinbuck, only conservative law professor at Bowen School of Law at Euler. Got to run to it. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon. Yes, sir. The Doc Washburn Show continues on Little Rock's premier talk station, 101.1 The Answer. 101.1, The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues. You can sound off and talk back. 501-401-1011. Fascinating. I was not aware of this. We were talking to earlier on the show the only conservative law professor in Bowen School of Law, Euler, Robert Steinbuch. And I talked about a bill back in 2017 that Brant Smith, a state representative from Arkansas, tried to get passed to outlaw Arkansas courts considering foreign laws. And specifically, concern was about Sharia. And Governor Hutchinson at the time said, well, I don't see any need for this. What I didn't know was that it passed the House and the Senate and it actually became law. Somehow or another, it's been 9 years, and I forgot that part. So let the record be, let the record be, if it please the court, corrected. I like to revise and amend my remarks. All right, now, we said also earlier in the show, big concern about the vice president and the president's other negotiators, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and Steve Woodcock, going to Pakistan, trying to negotiate with the Iranian mullahs, goons, their thugs. It's a really bad thing and very dangerous. So our prayer is for their safety, because Pakistan is not a safe place. About 5 weeks ago, there was a violent attack on our embassy in Karachi, the capital of Pakistan. And our Marines had to wind up shooting these violent protesters who were trying to get into our embassy over there. So it's not good. Now, it also, as I mentioned earlier, the idea that we're willing to have a ceasefire and negotiate, to the Muslim worldview, that means that they hold the strong hand and we are dealing out of weakness. They could not comprehend the idea that we want peace and we're trying to avoid more innocent people in Iran from being killed. There's no way in the world they could wrap their mind around something like that. So this is why once the ceasefire was announced, thousands of Muslims all over X were celebrating, were cheering like, yay! Now, the president has said that a major facet of the ceasefire, if Iran wants the ceasefire to remain in effect, is the Strait of Hormuz has to be open. All right? We've shared with you before some of the thoughts of John A. Conrad with a K, John A. Conrad V, the CEO of the most visited maritime news website in the world, G Captain. He's a big enough deal that the president has had him to the Oval Office several times to get his thoughts, get his advice on maritime issues. So today, G Captain is reprinting a report from Reuters. The Strait of Hormuz remained shut on Friday, and Israel traded fire with Hezbollah in Lebanon, two disputes which the United States and Iran each described as violations of their ceasefire deal on the eve of their first peace talks of the war. The 2-day-old ceasefire has halted the campaign of U.S. and Israeli airstrikes on Iran, but it has so far done nothing to end the blockade of the Strait, which has caused the biggest ever disruption to global energy supplies, or to calm a parallel war waged by Israel against Iran's Hezbollah allies in Lebanon. Well, okay, first of all, Lebanon was not part of the ceasefire deal. Second of all, Iran keeps the Strait of Hormuz closed at their peril. It's not like Trump's not paying attention. And Iran's like, oh, we can throw our weight around, because they're so weak they agreed to a ceasefire in negotiations. They are misreading us. And they will never be able to figure out how not to misread us. We have diametrically opposed worldviews. I'm just trying to explain that to you. Okay, now, I had not planned on doing this. We got to get back to Iran. But Kaneko the Great over on Substack, breaking news: unsealed court documents reveal never-before-seen text messages between Tyler Robinson and Lance Twiggs in the hours after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. This is breaking. This is out today. And he has the screenshots. And I will do abbreviations for words that you can't say on the radio, according to the FCC, and I wouldn't say on the radio anyway. Robinson tells Twiggs, I am blanked, and there's no way of getting out of this short of my family being willing to cover for me. Tyler Robinson tells Lance Twiggs, a coworker, just sent him a photo of, quote, me on campus, unquote. He says he plans to call the police himself and, quote, go out on his own terms, unquote, explicitly stating that he had, quote, no intention of being drugged through the courts in front of the country, unquote. The full exchange from the newly unsealed search warrant. For all y'all out there saying, it doesn't matter. 30-06, couldn't have killed him. Doesn't matter, doesn't matter, doesn't matter. Tyler Robinson, quote, guess I'm just sitting in my car watching reels for another hour, hoping this guy blanks off, unquote. Tyler is waiting for a cop to leave the area where he stashed his gun, which he's attempting to retrieve. If I may, what an idiot. You think you're going to be able to retrieve your gun after you assassinate Charlie Kirk in broad daylight? What a blanking idiot. Well, no, if you must know, blanking was that was short for prevaricating, okay? I wasn't cussing myself. No, that's what they do. Lance Twiggs responds, are you okay still? Tyler Robinson, yes, checking spot again now. I'm sorry, but I think this might be it. If the way is clear, I can try and come your way to say goodbye. After that, I have a spot in mind that I'd call the police to. Lance, are there cops outside, and why are you calling the police anywhere? Tyler, not yet, but I have no doubt they will be on me within the hour, and I will be giving my location up and going out on my own terms. Sounds like you mean suicide. I have no intention of being drugged through the courts in front of the country. Can I come see you? After that, I can call my dad and see if he's willing to help me or not. Lance, I'm just at my parents' right now. Maybe I could make an excuse to head home for a bit. Tyler, you would need to do that right now. Lance, any ideas? Tyler, for an excuse, IDK. For getting out of this, none short of my family being willing to cover for me. I am blanked. Lance, I'm not going to be able to leave. What's something urgent I would need to leave for? Tyler, you could say there's an emergency at home that I need you for. Lance, I said I'm swapping laundry, heading home now. Tyler, nice. I'll see you soon. Coworker has just sent me the still of me on campus. What is your ETA? Lance, like 3 minutes. I hope you don't mind me offering an opinion here because, that's kind of what I get to do for a living, offer opinions. I think they got this guy nailed 6 ways from Sunday. And I think they're probably going to be able to prove his guilt in the murder of Charlie Kirk beyond a reasonable doubt in front of a jury of peers in a court of law. And I also just think it's remarkable how many people don't have any idea how anything works. Everybody's hating on the FBI. Well, the FBI is not prosecuting Tyler Robinson for the murder of Charlie Kirk. The local authorities in Utah are. The FBI was part of the investigation, but the FBI is not prosecuting Charlie Kirk's alleged murderer. Just thought I would share that with you for the record, for what it's worth. If you want to get in the conversation, as always, 501-401-1011. We got to get back to the Iran situation. But when I see breaking news, I'll break in. I'll interrupt myself to give you the breaking news. All right. More coming up straight ahead as the Doc Washer Show continues on Little Rock's premier talk station, 101.1 The Answer. 101.1 The Answer. Doc Washer Show continues. Sound off and talk back. 501-401-1011. President Trump on the tarmac, Joint Base Andrews, just confirmed that the Strait of Hormuz will be open. Quote, we're going to open the Gulf with or without them, but that will be open, the strait as they call it, unquote. So, again, thank you, and a big hat tip to Rich Cementa, Mr. Producer of the Mark Levin Show, for that breaking news. Trump's like, yeah, it's by the way, we're going to open it with or without their help. And, of course, the implication of that will be with or without their cooperation. Got it? So, anyway, we'll see what happens on that. Now, we'll get back to Iran in a minute. But I can't ignore the fact that Eric Swalwell's political career seems to be imploding. The California Teachers Association, over 300,000 union educators in California's public schools and colleges. Probably not a hotbed for conservatism, just so you know. Union teachers, quote, on their tweet just a few minutes ago, quote, the allegations are incredibly disturbing and unacceptable against Representative Swalwell. We are immediately suspending our support. You know, he's running for governor of California. Our elected board will be meeting as soon as possible to follow our union's democratic process to determine next steps. See, unlike Bill Clinton, who was already president when a lot of people found out what he did, Swalwell's not the only guy in the Democrat primary for governor. And for that matter, they got a jungle primary in California anyway. So it's not like they got a separate Republican and Democrat primary. They got a jungle primary. So whoever the top two vote getters are, then go to the runoff. And they got to figure out a way to get Swalwell out of there because they don't want the top two vote getters in the jungle primary to be Republicans. That would be just catastrophic for the California Democrat Party. Now, the great Hans Moncke, Mahncke, author of the great book, Swift Boating America, says Eric Swalwell is well known for an extremely low IQ, well known for having been compromised by a female Chinese spy, well known for relentlessly pushing the Russia collusion lie, among a long list of other well-known things. Somehow, none of that gave the teachers union even a moment's pause when they enthusiastically backed him for governor of California. But now that he's merely accused of sexual misconduct, suddenly there are standards and he's thrown overboard without a second thought. Tells you more about the teachers union than Swalwell. Oh, buddy, I was not expecting that. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Hans Moncke for the win again. And that just dropped like 3 minutes ago. Wow. That's just remarkable. Okay, now, I got some audio clips we need to get to. Ted Cruz. We've got 3 clips from Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz on Iran. Cut 1, please.
Well, I think President Trump has shown bold leadership. And in terms of this military operation, virtually all of the military objectives have been achieved with incredible success. We've seen the air defenses of Iran almost totally obliterated. We have seen the ballistic missiles destroyed. We've seen the ballistic missile manufacturing destroyed. The same with drones, both drones and manufacturing destroyed. We've seen the Air Force almost entirely taken out. We've seen the Navy, more than 140 ships sunk, the biggest naval defeat since World War II. We have also seen the Ayatollah and virtually all of the senior military leadership taken out. So in terms of a concentrated military operation, it's been incredibly successful.
Yeah, it has been successful. But again, All of that notwithstanding, they think they have the upper hand because we were willing to call a ceasefire and negotiate with them. They have no idea what we're doing. Ted Cruz, cut two, please.
Now there is a pause in hostilities, and President Trump is absolutely right when he has said what he expects of Iran is, number one, zero enrichment, and number two, that they hand over the enriched uranium they have right now. President Trump is right to draw that line, to insist upon that, and he's been clear as well that Iran will open and keep open the Strait of Hormuz. They will not use it for negotiating or blackmail, and I think if they try to do so, the president's threat remains very operative, that if they shut down the Strait of Hormuz, if they break this agreement, that I think the president is prepared to take out the power generation in Iran and to take out the bridges of Iran.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, one more. Ted Cruz, cut three.
He does not have to do so, but the Iranian leadership is going to determine if they think he's bluffing and they try to call his bluff. It will not work out well. Here's the outcome I'd like to see. I'd like to see a peaceful Iran with a government that wants to be friends with America, that is not waging war on America, that is not killing Americans. That would be good for the people of Iran. That would be good for America. That's what President Trump, I believe, is trying to achieve.
Yeah, that is what he's trying to achieve. Let me go back to Swalwell. Eric Swalwell ceased and desisted the women who came forward to share their stories of sexual assault in the middle of the night. And there is a screenshot of a cease and desist order from an attorney representing Swalwell. More. Former staffer of Eric Swalwell says she was sexually assaulted twice by him, says she woke up in his bed with no clothes on. First incident reportedly took place in 2019. Swalwell's been married since 2016. Woman said she was hired at the age of 21. At one point in 2019, Swalwell did exactly what Bill Clinton was accused of having done to Paula Jones. And if you're from Arkansas, you know what I'm talking about. Except instead of doing it in a hotel, he did so in a parking lot, according to the San Francisco Chronicle. Later that same year, the former staffer said she was invited out for drinks. The Swalwell says she became intoxicated. She didn't remember the rest of the night. And it goes on and on and on. Ruben Gallego, a U.S. Senator from Arizona, has withdrawn his endorsement. Yeah, Swalwell's going down. All right, Doc Washburn Show continues. More breaking news coming up. Little Rock's premier talk radio station, 101.1, The Answer. 101.1 The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues. Sound off a talkback 501-401-1011. Douglas Murray over in the New York Post op-ed, we must crush Iran now so it can't come back and spread terror. And here's what he has to say. A great scholar of the Islamic world, Bernard Lewis, was once asked the main difference between the Islamist and Western mind. He replied that whereas we in the West think in 2-year electoral cycles, 4 years at most, the Islamist mind sees a decade as the very shortest measure of time. I was reminded of that comment this week as a tentative ceasefire went into effect in the Middle East. It's too early to know whether the latest ceasefire will hold, but it is early enough to know that it should not. Not if America is going to achieve any of its objectives in the region. One of the first stated objectives of this war has been the overthrow of the revolutionary Islamic government in Iran. That objective has not been achieved. It is true that one of the first strikes of this war killed the Ayatollah, Ali Khamenei, but his foul Islamic regime with its terrorist armies at home and abroad remains in power. It is still able to terrorize the people of Iran, the region, and indeed the world. The historic joint U.S.-Israeli attack on the Iranian nuclear program has undoubtedly set that program back massively, but it has not completely destroyed it. All parties agree that the regime in Tehran still has stockpiles of enriched uranium. And while it looks like the majority of Iran's stockpiles of ballistic missiles have been decimated, they have not been wiped out entirely. In other words, at present, the revolutionary government in Iran lives to fight another day. Worse, it appears to have come out of this latest ceasefire arrangement with the belief that it can shake the Strait of Hormuz like a fundraising cup, toll charging any international container that it permits to travel through that waterway. Which brings me back to the question of objectives and timescales. At home in America, there are some people who seem intent on portraying the extraordinary successes of this war as failures. Certain Democrats who would ordinarily rail against a totalitarian, bigoted, human rights bulldozing regime like that in Iran are eager to portray this war as a loss for America. One New York Times contributor this week even claimed that the war has turned Iran into a major world power. Boy, that's ridiculous. Such people are only saying this because they dislike President Trump. If the president caused world peace to break out, these same people would oppose it and explain why world peace is not in the interests of the world. It's the same on the kookiest parts of the American right. Trump castoffs like Marjorie Taylor Greene are enraged because they don't believe America has the ability to have a foreign policy and a domestic policy. They believe that the world's superpower can only afford to do one thing at a time, and that Trump is somehow letting down his electorate by looking at any issues farther afield than the state of Maine. Now, some of this gang have become so devoid of morals that they are even justifying the Iranian regime's decision to hang teenage protesters. Such figures of left and right are insisting that Trump should step down, or that old tedious saw that the 25th Amendment should be invoked. These noisy barkings might lead some people to forget that polls show that Republican voters, not only MAGA voters, but Republican voters remain massively supportive of the war against Iran. The base trusts the president's instincts and recognizes that America needs to stop the thuggish regime in Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. But there is a timescale problem, and it is one that Vice President J.D. Vance and others are acutely aware of and appear to be driven by. While the mullahs are looking to survive, the Republican Party is looking to the House and Senate races in November. Vance and others fear that the disruption of global energy markets and the effects of a few weeks of increased gas prices could lose them the midterms. But this is where, once again, democracies like America end up being at a disadvantage. It is one that our leaders and the public need to be aware of. Let's say that the Republicans do lose both houses in November. Will a weakened administration have the free reign it does now? I doubt it. And what if 2028 onward? Will a President Newsom or AOC show the kind of determination Trump has demonstrated to prevent the Middle East from descending into a nuclear arms race? I think we all know the answer to that, which is why this window of time is so important. There's a reason why the Middle East suffers from so many conflicts. Why have there been so many wars in Gaza? Why has Lebanon been in a state of war for almost 5 decades? Why has the whole region from Yemen to Cyprus had to put up with Iranian interference for 47 years? Because while the mullahs and their proxies are thinking about the end times, we are stuck worrying about the midterms. It is this short-term thinking that has led the West and its allies to keep stopping hostilities just before the point of total victory. The present ceasefire looks likely to lead to a return to the pre-war status quo, which means a return not to peace, but to war. If the ceasefire lines stop where they are, Iran will help Hezbollah rebuild its stockpiles in Lebanon. The regime in Tehran will rebuild its other terror proxies in the region, and the Iranian regime will continue its decades-long project to develop nuclear weapons. Trump has the ability not just to disrupt, but to destroy this cycle. He may be the only person in this era of history who can. It is not as though there is any leadership from any other democracy. The president may not be able to make the regime in Iran fall, but he has the ability to bring it to its knees and then to leave it on its knees until time and events can take their own course. As another sage once put it, whatever is worth doing at all is worth doing well. To which I might add that any job worth starting is worth finishing well. That is Douglas Murray. Over in the New York Times, pardon me, not the New York Times, the New York Post, an op-ed entitled, "We Must Crush Iran Now so it can't come back and spread terror." Now, I got to do a local story. We'll take a look at KTV. Daniela Dehagani, judge dismisses Brian Norris election challenge in Arkansas Secretary of State race. There is a lot more to this than you have heard in other places. And when I share this with you, you'll know what I mean. A judge has dismissed the legal challenge brought by Brian Norris in the Arkansas Secretary of State race, ending for now a court fight that was supposed to examine the election procedures in Saline County. Let's start where the court started, because this one didn't get decided on ballots or margins or recount math. It got decided on paperwork. But Circuit Judge Tim Fox never reached those questions. Instead, the ruling stopped at the threshold. The case wasn't filed correctly under Arkansas law. Brian Norris had asked the court to pause certification and preserve election materials while concerns about ballot handling and chain of custody were reviewed. But the court said the filing didn't meet a basic statutory requirement. Specifically, it lacked the required affidavit from the contestant. What was submitted instead was a verification. And under the law, those are not interchangeable. A verification, affidavit, two different things. So the court didn't weigh the allegations. It didn't review the conduct. And it also didn't get into the mechanics of how ballots were handled in Saline County. It said, in effect, we can't even open the door. And just like that, the case was dismissed without prejudice, meaning it could come back, but only if it is refiled correctly. Well, that seems reasonable so far. The order also went further, laying out additional legal limits. The judge noted that Arkansas law restricts who can bring election contests to candidates themselves, not campaign committees. He also pointed to strict deadlines baked into the statute, suggesting the emergency relief Norris requested didn't align with the legal framework governing these disputes. Now, here's the context. This didn't happen in a vacuum. After a closed statewide race against Kim Hammer, Brian Norris requested recounts in 6 counties Baxter, Washington, White, Grant, Miller, and Saline. And those recounts, they didn't move the outcome. Hand recount after hand recount came back with the same result, no meaningful change in the totals. But Brian Norris has consistently argued the issue was never just the numbers. It was the process behind the numbers, how ballots are secured, tracked, and verified. Chain of custody, as he's framed it, isn't a technicality, it's the foundation of trust. State officials see it differently. Arkansas Secretary of State Cole Jester said, quote, "We agree with the court's swift dismissal of this case. This outcome validates our continued commitment to upholding the rule of law and ensuring confidence in our legal and electoral promises. Legal and electoral processes." I guess there's supposed to be a quotation mark at the end of that, but she didn't have it. Well, so Cole Jester is ignoring what the judge said. And that's fine. It's his First Amendment right. Kim Hammer stated earlier that he's been consulting legal counsel as the challenge played out. After the case was dismissed, he said, quote, "Saline County has certified their election results. All 6 recounts confirmed the integrity and accuracy of the election. The Pulaski County Circuit Court had dismissed the lawsuit filed today. That order speaks for itself. Nothing more to say as the county election commissions diligently finish their business," unquote. So Channel 7's so-called reporter says, so where does this leave things? Legally, the case is done for now. It didn't get dismissed on evidence. It got dismissed on entry requirements. So what she doesn't say at the end of the article, she did allude to earlier, which is it can be refiled. For some reason, Brian Norris's attorney didn't file an affidavit with the lawsuit against Saline County. And obviously, the young fella, Cole Jester, still in his 20s, Secretary of State interim, and the old fella, Kim Hammer, state senator, rhino of all rhinos, are both acting like the judge ruled against Brian Norris based on the facts of the case. And that could not be further from the truth. So it'll be interesting to see if they do refile it. Very interesting. Because the facts of the case clearly make it look like Saline County did not follow state law in the way they did the recount. And who knows what else Saline County has not followed state law in. Yeah, I'm old enough to remember some big scandals regarding Saline County, if you catch my drift. And you don't have to be from here to know what I'm talking about. Boys in the Tracks, August 23rd, 1987. And a lot of us still think there are people walking around in this state who had something to do with the biggest murder mystery in the history of this state. Boys in the Tracks. But maybe the families will get justice someday. Hope springs eternal. More coming up as Doc Washer Show continues on Little Rock's premier talk station, 101.1 The Answer. 101.1, The Answer. Doc Washer Show continues. Sound off and talk back, 501 401 1011. You're not going to like this. I didn't like it. The great Emerald Robinson, who reports these days for Mike Lindell's Lindell TV. She used to be White House correspondent for Newsmax. I believe they fired her because she was too Christian for them. She says, where you think you are is Trump just destroyed Candace Owens, Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, and Megyn Kelly. Well, yeah, that's where I think I am. I think he did destroy him. She says, where you actually are, Trump can't even get his own FBI to fire the agents who raided his home. Oh! I told you weren't going to like it. Buddy. That right there, man. That one hurts. That right there, that's a crying shame, brother. I ain't going to lie about that. Now, Emerald had something else. And for those of us who are hoping that President Trump is finally going to nominate a good person for Attorney General, Emerald just 3 days ago said, I've interviewed the January 6 people. I've interviewed the lawyers for Tina Peters. I've interviewed the parents targeted as terrorists for attending school board meetings, and all of them told me Todd Blanche was the problem. Well, now, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche is the interim Attorney General while Trump's trying to figure out who the real Attorney General is going to be. All right, let's take a look. Joe Hanneman, who's been co-reporting the story of the real January 6th pipe bomber with Steve Baker, says, breaking, DOJ says pipe bomb suspect Brian Cole Jr. is not covered by President Trump's pardon declaration of January 20th, 2025. The DOJ lodged opposition to a motion filed by two of Cole's four attorneys claiming the charges against Cole were superseded by Trump's pardon for January 6 offenses. Steve Baker says, I actually agree with the DOJ on this for four reasons that are mostly not theirs. Number one, the pardon order clearly covers only behaviors on January 6, 2021, not January 5th. Number two, Brian Cole Jr. was not the person who laid those devices on the evening of January 5th. Number three, there was no crime. Part one, Shawnee Kirkhoff believed she was participating in a Capitol Police training exercise. That is my longtime working theory. Number four, there was no crime. Part two, as part of that training exercise, the training devices planted at both the RNC and DNC were inert and never intended to harm or do damage. The crime comes from those who planned for and recruited the participants in this fake exercise. Then, of course, by those who participated in the cover-up for over 5 years. There was indeed a criminal purpose behind the planting of those devices, but the criminals are higher up the U.S. Capitol Police and the intelligence community food chain. I'm telling you. This is Steve Baker. He's the reporter on this stuff. And he recently said, well, he recently demanded that Trump fire FBI Director Kash Patel, who has to know that the guy they arrested for the pipe bomber, January 5th, 6th thing is a patsy. He has to know. Jessica Watkins, January 6th type, says during the January 6th Oath Keepers trial, the FBI/DOJ put a convicted child rapist on the witness stand to testify against us. They promised him a new clean identity and witness protection in exchange for perjury. We never met the guy, a total stranger, completely uninvolved in January 6th. Steve Baker responded just a few minutes ago. Probably my favorite part of that trial was when Judge Mehta stopped the reading of his dozen different legal name changes and Abdullah Rashid then blurted out, that doesn't include the 30 other names I use online. That's the same DOJ now keeping Brian Cole Jr. locked up. I'm telling you. It's wrong. And I agree with Steve Baker. Kash Patel needs to go. And if you want to look, Steve Baker has video, why it's important, first disclosure, side-by-side videos of the gray-hooded January 5th pipe bomber and the former Capitol Police officer Shawnee Kirkhoff were taken approximately 18 hours apart, less than 2,000 feet from each other, and it's obviously her. No. I didn't say allegedly. No, they want to sue me? Have fun, brother. Discovery is going to be a lot of fun. Come at me, bro. Steve Baker and Joe Hanneman, Hanneman, I believe are doing the Lord's work and trying to get the truth out there. All right, I'm Doc Washburn, thankful that this door is open. And the great Dave Ellswick should be back 7:06 Monday morning. And I plan to be speaking with you again at 4:06 Monday afternoon, Lord willing, right here on Little Rock's premier talk radio station, 101.1 The Answer.